So now let's understand a little bit about group by. So there is a lot of rows. So I want to add up players total runs here. Okay, so for each player I would like to add their respective runs. So you need to separately learn more about what is group by, but I'll explain it at a very high level. So group by, I'm going to group by player. So what group by does is a very simple explanation for group by. I'll create an example data and explain group by. So let's say this is how we have a table, a very simple students subject wise marks. So this table, I'm explaining it at a very high level. So this is students subject wise marks. Okay, so this is the table that we have. Let's say I want to convert this into student wise total marks. Student wise total marks, that is, I don't want it by subject, I want it by student. So a way that we will be doing is, we'll have student ID, I need to have total marks, that's it, not subject wise marks. Okay, so in which case ideally these two rows has to be combined together and marks has to be added together, right? So that you will lose the subject information, but you will have total marks. So student A, student B. So instead of 4 rows, now I will have only 2 rows because I'm grouping by student. So student wise. So when I say student wise, each row here has to be a unique student ID. Student name should not repeat. So student wise total marks. So there is marks and I'm taking sum of it, that is total. Okay, so marks I have to sum it up. So this sum is 125. So I have to say 125. Student B sum is 175. So I'm adding it as 175 here. So if you look at, I lost subject information, but I've gained some important metric, students total marks. So in this case, you are grouping by student ID. You are taking sum of marks column. That is the operation that you are doing, right? So you're grouping by student. So in which case you're going to merge, if there are duplicate rows for a particular student, you are going to probably merge them together. That is what you see here. So there is only one row for A and another row for B. And if there are duplicates now, how are you going to handle? Anyway, subject you are not interested in. You have marks. So marks rows, you have 2 rows now. Which one will you take? Will you take min or max, or what you will take? So that defines the statistics that you are using, which is sum. So you're going to sum by the student here, right? Student marks. So that is what we are doing it. So grouping by student ID, taking sum of marks column. So this is one way of grouping. Let's say I say subject wise highest marks. So here the group by is different. I want subject. So in which case I will have only the subject column, but subject column values should not repeat. Only the unique values has to be there. So math, science will be there. I don't have student level information. It is subject wise. So in which case there are 2 math. There is math here. There is math here. So what I should do with these 2 numbers? Should I add them, or should I subtract? Should I divide, or what should I do? That defines what you want to achieve. So here I want to achieve highest marks, in which case for math, whatever is the maximum value, I should take it. So highest mark. So for math, the highest mark any student has achieved is 75. For science, the highest marks that any student has achieved is 100. So in this case, this is grouping by subject and taking max of marks. So that is the statistics that we are applying here. So why are you grouping? Because raw data will be like very granular. It's very detailed. It's very difficult. If I have 1,000 students, it will be very difficult to go and look at each and every marks. But in database, these details will be available. But when I visualize to do some analytics, right, I'll only be interested in the higher numbers. So for example, when you look at stock data, every milliseconds there is some change in the stocks value. But when we typically report stock market data, we'll say today's highest value, today's lowest value, probably today's last value. That is what we report, right? So those are some aggregated metrics. So you are condensing so much of information into few numbers so that I can understand the data much better. That is when your distribution analysis will come into picture, your frequency analysis will come into picture and all. So analytics here is more about how can I convey the data to the end user so that it's easy to digest. Individuals cannot digest this data. It will be very difficult. So we typically group it by student ID here or subject here, based on what charts we would like to visualize. So when I do student wise, I'm losing subject information. When I do subject wise, I'm losing student information. So this is more granular, more detailed. This is summarized version, and this is also summarized version. So this is more granular data. Okay, so this is how typically data will be stored in a database. More detail as much as possible, more detail will be captured, whereas here we'll have summarization that will be available based on how you'd like to summarize. So this is what group by will do. So here I have player information, runs information from each and every match. So this player from Afghanistan has scored 118 runs with a strike rate of 97 in this particular match date in this ground against Canada. So likewise, if I filter for let's say Sachin, or if I filter for let's say India. So where is India? India is here. So if I look at Sachin, has scored 112 runs with a strike rate of 104 against to whom? Against Sri Lanka. In another match, he has scored 65 against New Zealand. In another match, he has scored only 7 against New Zealand. So player wise, match wise, we have runs, but I don't want match level information. Instead, I want player level information. So I should group by player and then aggregate and say total runs is equal to runs, that is the original column name. This is the new column that I'm going to create. Like here, right, we used total marks. It's a new column that we created using marks column, right? Whereas here this is highest mark using marks column. So new column total runs by each player. What I have to do, I have to sum what runs column. So for each player, if there are duplicate values, calculate total runs. So how should you calculate total runs? Use runs column and then sum it up, but do it one player at a time and add the values. So that is what we will do here. So player wise, so now you see, originally we had this data with a lot of columns, lot of information, and the data size is around 55,926. Whereas now moment I grouped it by, the number of columns is just one here. This is index, because I have created only one new column. If I look at the shape, its size is 1936. So I've condensed 55,000 rows. So I've condensed them into 1900 rows by grouping it by player. So whatever player records that were duplicated. So here Sachin not duplicated, but match wise details we have. So I've grouped all Sachin's records into a single number. That is the total runs. So I've taken all Sachin rows and I've added them together. Likewise, I'll do this for every player and come up with this output, which is player wise. So you'll see player wise total runs. So if I do reset index, it will be coming as a new column instead of index. So this is a function to move values from index to columns. So otherwise what will happen is the player information will be available in the index. So I don't want that. I want it as a new column. So I'm using this thing. So this is nothing but player wise total runs. This data, new data that I have. So the original data, we haven't touched it. The original data is still data.head, that we haven't touched it. But I have a new data with me, which is slightly less number of rows, but only 2 column, player and the total runs. It's a summarized version of it. How did we achieve this? We grouped it by player. In fact, you can group it by, if you feel that 2 player name will repeat, you can group it by country and then player and do the operation, so that you'll have country, you'll have player, you'll have total runs as well. Okay, so depending upon what data you have, after filtering, you can take that, group it by country. A player, sometimes there could be a player name which is appearing in 2 different countries. Ideally I should not club them, right? So I'm taking country as well as player to group by, and then summing up based on the runs column. So this is what is called as grouping operation, player wise. So each row will be 1 player, and player wise total runs I'm computing. So I'm taking the original runs column, summing it up, and then computing total runs. So let's take this code alone. Let's take it and place it in our place it here. So I'm, instead of printing the data frame, I'm going to do this player wise total runs. Initially I'm going to do it on the filtered data, not on the original data, only on the filtered data, so that we'll select a country, we'll select a particular year and then compute. So for a country, for a particular year, we are grouping on the filtered data, not on the original data. We are taking total runs for each and every player. So let's look at it, and this data, let's write it to a data frame, that is, write it to a table. So player wise total runs. So here we'll use container with equal to true and place it here. So let's refresh. So let's take India. So India, let's take 1980. Also we should make sure that we sort the information, otherwise it's not going to be helpful. Player wise total runs is equal to player wise sort underscore values ascending equal to false. Sort, okay, sort by total runs. So let's say I take India and then I sort it. So you can see 1983 Kapil Dev has the highest number of runs, and 1985 Ravi Shankar Jay Shastri and Sunil Gavaskar, Krishnamachari Srikanth in 1988, who has the highest number of runs. Then Asharuddin and Sachin Tendulkar, all the way. I think in between Rahul Dravid, I think Sachin took a break. So Rahul Dravid and Gautam Gambhir in 2008. MS Dhoni in 2009, Virat Kohli in 2011. I have records till 2011 only, guys. So a very simple filter is giving so much of information to us because we did some summary and now we are using filters to play around with.